Right. So, good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Roundtable with Nora Edopolo. Today, we are going to the second part of the series that we started 2 weeks ago, where we were talking about, Christian families that have to deal with children who are presenting as, whether lesbian or gay, etc., etc., etc. I'm hoping that we can take that conversation forward today. My name is Nora Edopolo, your host. Please share this link and get your friends and family members to subscribe to my channel. And I always like to start by saying that the views expressed on this program are those of the speaker, and we do not speak or represent any other entity but ourselves. Okay, so we'll continue with our topic, Bridging the Gap, Faith, Family, and LGBTQ plus realities, okay? And by the way, let me also say that we discovered that, so from going forward, we're going to pre-record. So this is a pre-recorded session, but it doesn't matter. You can still post your questions on the comment section, and I would always get our guests to answer them, with time. So part of what's going to happen is that after the edition, you post your questions, we get the answers, and we send the answers back to you. We discovered that pre-recording the sessions, gives you a better experience than us struggling with connectivity whilst we're live. We're still in the developing country, so we understand the challenges that we face. As followers of Christ, we are confronted with situations that test our faith, challenge our understanding, and push us to seek deeper wisdom from God's word. Today, we are going to be diving into one of those challenging areas, all right? How do we navigate the realities of LGBTQ community? They are here with us. Some of us, interestingly, the three of us here have had to work on a case some time ago. So it's not something that is far away. I'm sure that if we were to do a census, you'll be amazed that there's hardly any family that doesn't have a family, particularly for folks who have either gone abroad, etc., who doesn't have a family member that is, affected by this in one form or the other. My guest today still remain Reverend Dr. Adeoye Oyewole, a respected theologian and a mental health expert. Welcome on board, Doc. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. And Mrs. Wigwe, a seasoned Christian counselor with extensive experience working with families in crisis. Mrs. Wigwe, thank you so much. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you.
So we're going to be looking at, the link, we did a bit of history the last time. If I remember well, my takeaway from the last time was that, one, there could be a biological error. Incidentally, Dr. Oyewole shared a video with me recently of what do I call her now? A female male. She has both organs, all right? And she's a woman. If you look at her, she has the female genitalia, she has the male genitalia, she has impregnated women, she has children. I mean, it's mind-boggling, okay? But that is the reality that we're living with, okay? Even though I must confess, that particular video, I wonder to myself, could her story have been different in terms of her values and the things that she promotes, if you know what I mean? But that's the story for another day, okay? But it's just to bring home the fact that sometimes it could be as a result of a biological error. We also saw the fact that it could be as a result of abuse, all right? So if a child was abused at a young age, the child grows up to now think that what is, that which is abnormal is normal. And we've had cases like that before. But I don't do all the talking today. I want to dive further because in the time that we have, we need to finish up. Mrs. Wigwe, as a counselor, What are some early signs that a child might be struggling with their sexual identity or experiencing same-sex attraction?
Okay. Just like a doctor shared in the last episode, when he talked about, certain things that we notice when the child is younger, probably wanting to play with playthings that would usually, like dolls and all of this, and generally behaving in some kind of, effeminate way. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That would points to the fact that, okay, maybe there's something wrong. I'm slightly hesitant in giving those kind of examples, because I've also seen children who have behaved that way but have not turned out, to be different in any sort of way like that, right? Now, I'm very curious about what you said, that you wondered when you were doing the introductions, that you wondered if something would have been different if her values were different or something. It's just made me very curious, because I think it has a lot to do with what we want to talk about.
Okay. Interesting, because this particular lady, I mean, in my dictionary, she's at the extreme of promiscuity. All right. So I'm asking myself, okay, so what happened? Is what she has become the only way, to respond to it? I mean, sleeping with men and women. I mean, she's defined by her sexuality, and I don't think that's appropriate. But like I said, don't take us there, particularly for those who haven't seen that video.
No,
yeah, go on.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important, because we're talking about her being defined by her sexuality, her being promiscuous, right? We do have people who are completely normal, as it were, who do a lot worse. Do you understand?
Well,
so
that's possible.
it wouldn't have anything. Yeah, it wouldn't have anything to do with, her own situation.
I think let me come in there. I think where the church, or we're talking about the faith helping us. Where I think the church has actually failed in a way is the overemphasis on sexual intercourse as a sin, rather than interrogation of sexuality. They are two different things. Sexual intercourse is a very small part of a person's sexuality. Sexuality is the total combination of your person, your emotional reaction, your preference, your philosophy about intimacy, your bias, your belief system as a person. Oftentimes, in the church system, we are waiting for somebody to cross the line of our legalistically defined right sexual act. Nobody interrogates. How did this person get to this point? What made this person to do this? I have an interesting experience, because I get involved with my denomination on a number of disciplinary issues, they call it. And then we had a pastor who was was sleeping with a choir, and they've taken him through a number of disciplinary measures. And I raised the issue that, has any psychiatrist seen this person? To cut long story short, when he was examined, we found that he has an illness that we call mania, the bipolar affective disorder, manic illness. And one of the symptoms of manic illness is sexual indiscretion. There's increased desire for sex, and so there's sexual indiscretion. Apart from that, they're very apparative. They're very convincing. Ideas run through their minds. They are very jocular. They are fun to be with. But underlying it is also sexual disinhibition and social disinhibition. So it had to be treated. So for me, I think the church may need to take a bit of a step away from legalistic societal definitions. We are not part of this world. We are from another world. And the laws that govern us is the law of divine love. So when we look at issues, it should be less of legalism, but that of empathy. Empathy will consider sexuality, because that lady, very intelligent. She has a dual sexuality. And she mentioned that, I would prefer to be a male because the sensation I have, which I also have as a married man, because I'm male, is that the male organ, it's more sensitive, but the other one is not working. And that in her relationship with other men, he has had it bad because they want to harass her, they want to judge her. But with the females, because she can have this sexual intercourse seamlessly with them and with understanding, she's more comfortable with them. So I think what Mrs. Wigwe is referring to is that we need to consider, even when we are teaching our young people, I have to teach my children about sexuality. Sexuality also has to do with dignity, self-esteem. You see a lady who is sleeping all over the place, promiscuous. It could be that she has been raped and her self-esteem has been damaged. But in the church system, I'm just trying to look at what has he done, what has she done. Oh, I'm disappointed in you. And the person says, please get disappointed more. Because you don't know where I'm coming from. You don't know my journey. You don't know how I got to this point. So oftentimes we don't consider sexuality. We don't consider sexuality. We look at sexual acts. And this is where we are not helping the LGBTQ people.
So in a way, again, takes me to my next question, actually, because so maybe I should just go in and ask that question to you, Reverend. How should a Christian parent respond when they first suspect or learn that their child might be on that spectrum? Beyond the shock, that initial shock and, oh my God, what should they do?
Professional help. They need professional help, especially in this part of the world. With due respect to our colleagues who are pastors, we still hold on to the biblical instruction about lesbianism and all of that. There is a biblical instruction that we have that does not allow us to be empathetic. So oftentimes, I think it is good that parents seek professional help. They should find a way to speak to a qualified counselor, a psychiatrist, or a psychologist. You see, because they have the lens to look at what is it that has made this child to go into this. We're talking about the biopsychosocial model the other time. And the aim is not to impose. We are not trained to impose our view. We're just supposed to be empathetic and listen to the story. How did it begin? How did it grow? What happened around the time? How did it come about this? Any influence? And for the client to be able to express herself or himself while we try to offer help in the context of the conflict.
So what I hear you say is that, the Christian parent, I'm assuming that there would be that initial shock. So, hopefully you would recover from that sufficiently to be able to say to yourself, so let's go and see a doctor. Let's go and see, a psychiatrist, etc., etc. All right. Now, where is, because don't forget here, I'm trying to juxtapose both the need for what you just described and our default setting of prayer and fasting. You know what I mean? So how do you bring that dimension into what you have described in dealing with this?
Yeah. Before Mrs. Wigwe talks, I double as a pastor and as a psychiatrist. You see, the prayer and fasting must be targeted at a point to a particular issue. What are we praying and what are we fasting for? We need that professional assessment first. Now, in that professional encounter, definitely parents will gain insight into what led to this particular thing that gave us shock. It could be biological, like you have for that woman. Don't forget, in that video, she said she belongs to a church where she's accepted. And you can see that she has grown. He said at a point she also even wanted to commit suicide. At a point she also was going into drugs because she just found herself different. But the church accepted her, which is a factor where the clergy may need to redress, especially coming from this part of the world. If it is in the developed countries, they may be a little more sympathetic because of the dominance of understanding of science.
Mm-hmm.
But here, even lepers, you forgot even lepers, which is just a skin disease caused by mycobacterium, they were ostracized in the Bible. The Bible says lepers should not come into the camp. But we know that leprosy, there's leprosy mission. You know, a lot of churches are about to come up with organizations that treated leprosy. So the point I'm making is that before prayer and fasting, let's define what we are praying about.
Yeah.
Am I praying for my son? Because it could be, at times, some people are influenced socially. Some people are influenced by peer pressure. I can pray about that influence, break the hold of that influence. As I am praying and I'm fasting with an empathetic mind, I seek counsel. I also discuss with my child from a position of revelation knowledge and of love, not of reaction, not of displaced aggression, that you want to destroy my testimony. You want to destroy, like children who are found in addiction. A good number of our respected men of God have one or two children in addiction. Struggling with drugs. And it's the same pattern. Because the child who is also into addiction, there's a biological component to it. Some people will smoke marijuana 2-3 months and they'll get out. What this nonsense? You understand? Some people, they just need to taste it once. The receptors, because of the genetic predisposition, hooks the child. And the child is finding it difficult, destroying him in school, does not want to leave it. And the parents are now embarrassed. I can imagine if I have a child like that, I'll feel embarrassed. I teach mental health all over the place. I'm a pastor. So oftentimes we struggle about ourselves and we leave the child without that empathy. That's why we need help, professional help. Now, after the professional help, prayer points become more discreet and where we direct our prayers to.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Logan. You want to add something?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I'll add to that. You see, a lot of times I believe that whatever we face, right, are more like our messengers, more like showing us an area of need. Because as Doctor was speaking, I was listening and I observed that it's easier. The problem is even easier to deal with when you already have an ongoing relationship where there's good communication. When there is no communication in the first place, this kind of situation is 10 times the problem that it would be, right? Now, in most homes, that good communication does not exist. And when we now come to this point where that communication is required, we start to struggle and we jump in from a position of assuming that the communication already exists. It doesn't. It doesn't, and it will definitely make things more difficult. So first and foremost, having a good communication with children, with spouse, very, very key. There's no kind of work you can be doing, no kind of important. Some of us have been called to police the earth, okay, but even with that, right, there must be you must have time for your family and talk to them. It can't be in the moment of crisis that you start beginning to assume that leadership role or thinking that no, you must listen to me. This is how it must be. No. And again, that is why that professional help is required. Because if you try to go in from that point of view, it cannot work. It cannot work. So both in dealing with your own judgments and then finding out that even you, it's not just this person that is broken, as it were, that needs fixing. It's everybody. It's everybody because it will affect everybody as well. Now, the lady that we had been talking about, right, the efficacy of her support system impressed me. The fact that the parents put into consideration that she was born that way, so it was not her fault. Now, every other thing that happened, whether we could look at it as, oh, she was promiscuous or she was misbehaving or anything like that, I guess they could understand that she was battling something, dealing with something, and they stood by her. She specifically mentioned that if they hadn't been there, that she probably would have committed suicide, right? It's important for every one of us to have that kind of support system where we are accepted and supported. It's easy to say, oh, don't, I mean, hate the same, love the individual. But how many of us really do practice it? Because sometimes you find that it is at that point in time we discover that what is most important to us is our image outside. And it takes over everything, right? Now, if the image outside takes over everything, it will be difficult for that kind of person to pray and fast in a way that will be effective, objective or effective in any way. What I have found in my practice is that when people come in and they are talking about let's pray and fast, and they haven't quite understood or even allowed themselves to listen to the issue on ground without bias, right? It can be a lot more destructive because it creates such a distance that sometimes a family doesn't come back from. It doesn't come back from it. And we have a lot of families right now that I know of that are battling this thing. I promise you, it is not funny at all. And they have not been able to claw their way back from there. And what is the main reason? Because probably the authority figure in the house, the father, believes that things must be a certain way. Solutions as well must be only in a particular way. That's the only way it can be. It can't be any other way but that. Yeah. And of course, it doesn't work. Yeah.
I think that's very brilliant. Let me make a few comments on what she has just said. She has just had to wrap up the thing. Lack of communication. How many parents actually are connected to their children? Because you see, these gaps exist a lot of times. A lot of us, I was talking to youth sometimes. I said, nobody taught us how to achieve self-control. They were just waiting for us to behave in a way that will show we lack self-control and we are punished.
Yes, true, very true.
How many pastors, practically, or youth pastors teach that at times we have struggled with having desires, lustful desires with women? How did we, spiritually and otherwise, handle ourselves to arrive at the point that we are? But we are quick to pronounce what we will use to judge them if they cross them. So a lot of our young boys have had to struggle to find their own way of self-control. We just announced that self-control is a fruit of the spirit, you know, and that's it. So you are right by saying communication gaps, and when there is that gap, something bad happens that we don't like, then we evoke authority. That authority, we erroneously want to play God in the child's life. God hates it. You are a sinner. You are a pest to this family. You are a blemish, and all of that. And that's our prayer point. So you are right. By the time the professionals break down the problem, we can begin to see how we can pray and how we will move forward as family. I see families where at times the father and the mother, they will even part ways. The man will say it's the woman that caused it. Even common addiction. You understand what I'm saying? People still part ways over it. So for me, faulty parenting comes from faulty, abnormal marital relationship. Because when that marital relationship is not sound, then there's no parenting. Parenting is not disconnected from the quality of marital life. If anybody is parading a form of parenting that is not attached to the marital life, then of course, this is the kind of result we get. So when a situation like this comes up, it's a test of the marital stability and of the quality of which is
Thank you
communication.
So much. If you are just joining us, this is the Round Table with Nora Edopolo. It's a place where we have conversations on contemporary issues in the Christian faith. Today, we're looking at bridging the gap, faith, family, and the LGBT realities. I have with me Reverend Dr. Adeoye Oyewole, a respected theologian and a mental health expert, and Mrs. Dupe Wigwe, a seasoned Christian counselor with extensive experience working with families in crisis. All right. Please follow us on our new Instagram, YouTube page dedicated to this podcast. Instagram and YouTube, you have at TRT with Norua as one word, TRT with Norua. And on Facebook, it's the Round Table with Norua Edopolo. Okay. So, Doc, tell me, how can the church create a safe place for conversations about sexuality while remaining grounded in biblical truth?
Thank you very much. I think they need experts who are Christians to speak on this matter. We need seminars on it. I was at a camp over the weekend. I was talking to the young ladies. We call them leaders in our group in the Baptist denomination. And I was talking about abuse and mental health. So I listed the forms of abuse. Part of it is preference for the female sex. So that some of you girls, your father, from the day you were born, your father has rejected you. Some children are born in between families. Maybe the mom had her when he was in secondary school, and the woman has gone ahead to marry, and the man has gone ahead to marry. Such children are in between. I don't know whether you're getting what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Some of our children are raped under our nose, and you are not supposed to tell your parents. So I listed it. As I was listing it, I listed about 12. About 2 or 3 girls just came out and started crying.
Wow.
Now, it shows that my listing is empathetic enough. I didn't go to the internet to get this list. It is what I found in my experience. It's high time the church addresses this. So I told the person that invited me, I said, it's not enough for these girls coming out. They need people who will work with them through this trauma. Otherwise, it will affect their career or their marriage. But thank God they have come out. They are both. Thank God they have even taken a step to come out. From the way I spoke, I let them see that there's nobody who has not had one form of it or the other. But it can be more, it can be more traumatic than the other. So it is high time the church, through the training of the clergy in basic psychological, psychotherapeutic techniques, to know that we are first of all human beings before we want to be spiritual. And that the evidence of spirituality is not in the spirit, it's in the mind. Now, the fruit of the spirit is love, joy, patience. It's not in the spirit, it's in the mind. So if I want to measure spirituality, I go for your mind. Unfortunately, the mind of man in Africa and in theological discourse or religious discourse has been pushed into the background. When we are trying to see somebody who is spiritual, is either he staggers and is almost falling down, or he speaks in tongues in a particular way or another, and some people are falling down, which are also good things. But beyond that are these indices of the mind. So the church needs to wake up and get professional, scientific understanding of a number of issues that affect behavior. Is it addiction? Is it sexual promiscuity? Is it LGBTQ? Is it anger management? Is it some people stealing church money and we keep canceling and canceling? It could be a psychiatric problem. Somebody just keeps stealing. You understand? So that toga of overt moral and legalistic lens is not helping us at all. In fact, we are losing our children to the peer pressure. The so-called peer pressure becomes important when we as Christian parents cannot connect with them at their level. And what's their level? The level of their experience, which science has predicted, which science attempts to explain. Now, when we meet them there, we can take them to the spiritual. But if we skip this aspect we're talking about and we want to take them to spirituality, then it is not spirituality. It is some voodoo.
In actual fact, Scripture actually supports everything you said, because when a man is born again, it is a spirit man that is transformed. All right? Yes. So when the Bible says all things are passed away, behold, all things have become new, it speaks to the spirit man. The soul and the mind that you refer to is what Romans says, be ye transformed by the renewing of your mind. So I think the challenge is that we've seen the mind instead of seeing the mind through a kaleidoscope, we've seen it in, black or white. I don't know if you're getting
That's the problem.
Yeah.
Thank
so
you, Pastor.
the mind is like a kaleidoscope. All right. There are dimensions to the mind beyond what we, so for us today, once you, like you rightly said, once you exhibit, some of those traits, fruit of the spirit, we assume that you are good to go. But there are dimensions of the mind that we need to understand, even with the help of science.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
That's what I hear you say. And I like the. Yeah, go on.
Because Pastor, we are a product of the place we were born. There is a genetic loading. This way I behave, and you make fun of me. My dad was like that. I'm just a better manifestation of maybe a modern manifestation of my dad. Yeah. So genetics, my upbringing, values, culture, and the kind of environment I grew up, they all come together to produce who we become. Even though I'm a Christian, Paul is different from Peter. Peter is different from James in terms of their temperament and their upbringing and their occupation. But the Lord took hold of it to work for him. So we should not annihilate people's persona, their persona. God wants us to be who we are as he modifies us to become more like Christ, not to annihilate. What we practice most times is nihilism, which is against God. It's violation of the sacredness, of the uniqueness of the human soul.
Mrs. Wigwe, what message of hope? Go on. Yeah, go on.
Right. I'd like to also point out another dimension when one is using a professional. It is possible for Christian parents to go to a professional and think that, oh, this professional is not, she doesn't even speak, or he doesn't even speak. He just agrees with, it seems to be agreeing with what the child's lifestyle, right? Now, redirection does not happen by force. And it is important, right, that the child is carried on. If this is the lifestyle that the child prefers at that point in time, that is what it is. Short of killing that child, we can't really do much about it. However, it could also be possible that it is just for that time. After a while, with additional knowledge, the child can actually see differently. What kind of time frame determine? The only thing that we have to give is that support continuously. Now, for some people, they want it to happen on their time frame. It has to be now. By the time we come out of this session, it should be different. It should be a different person. It does not work that way. It doesn't work that way. And when working with a professional, you will find that he or her, right, will work from that perspective, and we'll work with the child based on, if this is what you want to do, these are the things that come with that. So a child that's their lifestyle right now, and they don't intend to change it, at least let them even be aware of the consequences. Because you can't be that way and be assuming that other people would not have their own preferences. The same way people can't trample on yours right now, you can't trample on someone else's preferences. So within the church, for example, right, the pastor has a duty of responsibility to the others in church as well as to this individual. The pastor must know how to balance it. Because the same way, if someone is caught stealing, there could be consequences for that. The same way too, if this person is caught trying to recruit someone, there would be consequences for that as well. Do you understand? And it's not about discrimination. It's about, look, this is how it is. That doesn't mean that there is no love or there is no support, but it's not permitted under any circumstances. But we need to be able to differentiate, right, between offering that support and then this outright discrimination completely, not being able to offer that support at all. Very, very important, because in working with a professional, you have to understand the different angles that come to play. Even as the person explains, you be able to see where the person is coming from.
Thank
I'd
you.
also like to say that.
Yes, go on.
Yeah.
Go on.
Let me just quickly finish. Yeah. I'd like to say that in most cases, right, when people submit to this and decide that I want to learn, I want to understand, I will listen, what I have found is that the family comes out much stronger. Much stronger. The last time on this show, I was talking about nature loving diversity, right? It is not only one way that a solution can come. Sometimes we can be praying for something, right? A certain kind of solution. And the way the solution is presented is seeming extremely, it looks like, no, this can't be God. It cannot be, God cannot possibly be in this thing. And yet, when we trust, which I believe is really what we are called upon to do, when we do not understand, to trust that God knows, right? And we now find out that that same thing that could ordinarily have destroyed us completely, could have destroyed the family, suddenly becomes that thing which makes us even stronger. We learn to talk. We suddenly find out that the kind of love we thought we had is not actually the kind of love that we even want in the family. We would like to do better than that. Yeah. But the truth is, these are not things that you can simulate, right? You are confronted by a crisis that makes it so real. Do you understand? You need to step back and search yourself, right? And that is what brings about the change. That's what brings about the change. And that is why sometimes it is not just church. You know, I go to church, I come back, I go to church, I come back. That's not where the change even comes from. It's that crisis that I face, you know, and what I do with it. Yeah, that now about the change.
Okay, Doc. Again, I'm trying to put myself in the place of that typical Christian family who is totally unprepared for this. All right.
Yeah.
The children grow up, she was delivered in church, did dedication in church, has been going to Bible, children's school, Sunday school, was in the choir, he or she, and then suddenly, out of the blues, bingo, here we are. All right. Now, can you share some spiritual insights that, can guide that couple, that Christian couple, to maintain their faith as they deal with the complexities of this matter that we're discussing?
Yeah, thank you, Pastor. In fact, as Mrs. Wige was talking, and one word kept ringing, because that's what I use to gauge my relationship with my wife and children. I call it connection. It's just like, thank God today, the connection is stable. I can be in another location, and what we are having today may not be this easy, especially if the FPN connection.
Yes.
Now, parents may need to assess, like Mrs. Wige said, stand back. How connected are we to the children? It's a serious question. When I mean connection, I can take my child through motions of religion.
Yeah.
When I go to talk, I told an audience sometimes when my daughter had her first crush, she told me how she was feeling, how she couldn't let go of the guy, and all of that. Now she makes fun of me that I shouldn't feel big now that she told me that she will not be telling me again. I said, you will still tell me now. What I'm saying is there's a way you arrange yourself as a parent and try to establish connection. It's not easy. Trying to be a friend to your children when our culture prescribes that you are the father or you are the mother. It deals with the ego. So one of the prerequisites for parents who shouldn't even wait until there are issues is to establish friendship, the ability to make your children comfortable to speak their minds.
Yeah.
The ability for them to express their opinion, especially when they feel that is different from your opinion. My son, who is a doctor today, has given me a lecture on how he wanted to go and be a footballer. and how all the monies I've ever collected in my life. There's one particular footballer he used to tell me in those days. I kept reminding him. He said the man was earning something million US dollars or something, and he brought out a calculator. He said I should calculate all my money that I'm earning all of my life. And that this man is earning it in 1 or 2 months. So what is it that I'm doing? No, this is a serious question. But I wasn't disturbed. I have an understanding of what he's going through. I got into a discussion with him. I didn't transfer aggression. I didn't borrow strength from my being a father and an older person, because what he also was saying was true. Because some of these millionaires, some of these footballers earn a lot. And he sees me read, go to work, wake up in the night, write this thing. At times he asks for something, I said, please wait till the end of the month. So that vulnerability on the part of parents is very important. Actually, that's what parenting is all about. So for parents who may be in this shock, they need to calm down and let God take control. You know, like, God, you need to help me through this. I want to submit to your authority. I want to submit to counsels that come from God concerning this matter. I don't want to do it. You know, most times we are doing it our own way, and we think it's God that is using us. It's something that no parent would be happy about. So I connect with the grief, with the shock. I connect as a human being. I don't want to hear that my child is doing something bad that is against what the society has already prescribed or what our community prescribed. It's not pleasant, especially if you have had to help other people to become better. If you have counseled children and they respond to you, you now begin to even feel, can it be an attack of the devil? Some people begin to think like that. Some people begin to think, is it that I've offended God? God does not want us to think that way. That's the devil. The Bible says God has not given us the spirit that shrinks away from of fear, but of power, sound mind, and of love, isn't it? And that there is now no condemnation. We should not allow the devil to come in with the spirit of condemnation. It is self and ego that comes with condemnation. And that's what destroys family. Either I say, no, it's my family, is not. My wife, I hope this thing is not coming from your family. I hope it's not because of this film that you always watch together with your children that this is happening. You know, that's the first response of some parents, especially some men. They begin to shift blame. We even leave the child, say, who caused it? It's you. One time I said you should not go to America. I said you should not go to London. You are the one. No? So the devil has gotten them. And once it brings that conflict, they cannot center on God again. So they need to seek the face of God, to be guided by his spirit. Number 2, that guidance can only come through divine love, agape. Because the essence of that is to be able to connect with that child and that situation. It takes agape to do that. It has to be deliberate. It has to be intentional. And every encounter with the child must reflect that unconditional love. That's what establishes connection. In our field, we call it therapeutic alliance. Abi? If you don't have a therapeutic alliance with your client, you can't go anywhere. If the client does not trust you, you can't go anywhere. Parents are the first therapists. You cannot just module anything.
Oh.
Hello. Okay. The connection.
Yeah, the connection. Yes. I'm sure he'll come back.
I'm sure he will. Okay. While we're waiting for him, let me just add to what you were saying.
That therapeutic alliance.
Okay, he's back. Please. All right, go ahead. Go ahead, Doc.
She wants to say something.
Okay, yes.
I was just saying that, when we talked about, whether the child is doing something bad, beyond even the child is doing something bad, is the fact that the child could be endangering themselves. We know the kind of society where we are, right? The laws of our land itself, do you understand, does not support this. Right? There could be areas where the child will even be, and if this is known, the child can be stoned, the child can really be, a lot of things could go wrong. Do you understand? Right? So those are the things the child also needs to understand that we are concerned about. Do you understand? Their safety. right? We are concerned about that because this is a very real concern. And the fact that, right, a Christian parent also needs to understand that there is a life cycle in parenting. So the times when because this life cycle also affects when we hear about this thing and what we can expect in response. Do you understand? Because if you have a situation, if it was very much younger, you can say, stop playing with that dog, stop it. And the child will just stop. Do you understand? That is where that's where we are at that point, right? Go a little further down and you can get a why.
Yeah.
Do you understand? And when you get a why, what do you do with that? You can't respond the same way you were saying when you say stop it, right? A why is okay, because it may not be the best for you. Again, why? Do you understand? And now, the best thing you can do is to keep responding and not end it with you must do this. Right? Yeah. Okay, now move forward from that again. And it is after that that you get the shock. When the child has even started discovering themselves and thinks that they know it. There's an age where they think they know it all. Right? And that is when you now find out. When you confront that child, I promise you, you can expect that it would be a flowery conversation, to put it mildly. Do you understand? But as a parent, when you recognize the circles, you can also recognize what comes with them and understand where you are at that point, right? Because if you don't, you would overreact, which will only confound issues. Yeah. So it's important for us now. These are the sort of conversations that we need to be having.
Thank you so much.
So that people are aware. Yeah.
Thank you. Right. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, this has been another edition of the Roundtable with Nora, the place where we have conversations on contemporary issues in the Christian faith. Today, we've been talking about bridging the gap, faith, family, and LGBTQ realities. And I've had Dr. Oyewole and Mrs. Wigwe as my guests. Again, I'd like to say, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe to my channel, click the like button, and share this with your friends and family. This is probably one of the most impactful sessions that we've had. I have no doubts in my mind that there are people for whom this program today would be, literally speaking, their deliverance, in quotes. All right, so we don't take it lightly. And as we begin to wind down, I like to say here that remember this, even as after all that we've said, the Bible still stands true. For with God, nothing shall be impossible. We have seen in the Bible all manner of situations and circumstances. I mean, if the dead can be brought back to life, what is a psychological or physiological or whatever name
biological accident
have called it? Yes, or biological accident. All right. Yeah. We must continually repose our faith in God, that with God nothing shall be impossible. But on your journey to that place of, where the situation changes, we are saying to you, love the child. All right, love the child, and try as much as you can to understand the why of the child, and help the child also to understand, the consequences. The truth is, today we are discussing a particular type of choice. There are other choices that we make in life, and choices come with consequences. All right. We could have been jolly well talking about marriage here today, and we're talking about, if you marry such a person, this is what happens. If you married such a person, this is what happens. So it's all about choices and consequences. I'd like to give very quickly now, as we begin to wind down, a chance for Mrs. Wigwe and Dr. Oyewole, a final word. And this time around, I want you to address, as it were, that couple for whom this is not theory. All right, they're in it. Yeah. You getting it? Yes, they're in it. Final words for them. We'll start with Mrs. Wigwe, then Reverend. Go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, right. This is the time to know, right, that God still loves you. He never stopped, never will. As Christians, we know He cannot stop, and that He is very present in this matter. Very present in this matter. And I'm hoping that the things that you have heard today, right, would also help you to understand that there are lots of other people who are going through it. You're not alone. You are not different as a result of what is going on now, and also that you can actually emerge from this a lot stronger than you think, and it is going to require trust that God always has a plan, always has a plan.
Thank you, ma'am. Reverend?
Yeah, my word is one, avoid the devil condemning you. Every good and perfect gift is from God. When this happens, look back at how God gave you the child. Remember the word spoken concerning the child. Revisit the promises of God. It helps you to be positive and to be connected. You must also recognize that you are an under shepherd, you're an under parent. You need the wisdom of God to navigate this challenge. I see, as it's in LGBT, I see it in addiction, I see it in all sorts. So you need that reassurance that God gave you this child. Number two, that you need the love of God. It's more than your love for him. This love I'm talking about is agape, taming your parental love, so-called.
Exactly.
You know, even in marriage, there's erotic love. Marriage doesn't work with erotic love. Agape needs to modify it. The same love we have for our children, let agape tame it. Then you can release him into God and begin to follow divine directions as you journey with him together with your spouse through this challenge. Lastly, don't forget about the authority of God's word, spoken word from your spirit. I'm not talking, rather than castigate, challenge, displace aggression, why don't you speak positive words into his life? You're going to fulfill destiny. You are good. I know you are a good child. You are a gift from God rather than condemnation. So it's a time that challenges us to be more spiritual, to be more broken in our ego and self and from our methods, and allow God to take control.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Next month, ladies and gentlemen, we have two interesting sessions coming up. Incidentally, Dr. Oyewole is my guest for the 2nd of October as we look at Gen Z and their mental health. I mean, we all know, prior to now, I've never heard about, I beg, my mental health. My mental health. I'm like, oh, they will slap you and you will rearrange your mental health.
You reset.
But the truth is, it is now a big deal. They are committing suicide, they are getting divorced, they are getting addicted to all manner of substances. So we can no longer say in our days, because our days are gone. All right?
They are gone.
How do we tackle the issues that are coming forth in this space? And then on the 16th of October, I have Dr. Kingsley and Layo Oyawoye, and we're talking about parenting in the digital age. It promises to be a great time for those two sessions in October, and I look to have you there with us. Please look up my e-commerce page at https://seller.co. I will share the rest of the link with you. And please, if you haven't done so yet, subscribe, whether on Instagram, on YouTube, or on Facebook. On Instagram is at TRT with Nora. On YouTube is at The Round Table with Nora. And on Facebook, it's The Round Table with Nora Edopolo. Thank you so much, Doc. Thank you so much, Mrs. Wigwe. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you. Thank you. And thank you so much, everybody. Do remember to send your comments, and we'll get back to you. Thank you, and God bless you. Bye.
Bye.
Yeah.